and welcome to this session of LitFestx. We're with Anita Anand from UK. Anita is a presenter of Any Answers, which is the political phone-in program on BBC Radio 4. She's been a radio and television journalist for almost 20 years now. And to her credit, she has interviewed several prime ministers from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Great Britain. Her latest book, Sophia, is the winner of the Eastern Eye Alchemy Festival Award for Literature, and it was also shortlisted for the Best First Biography Prize. Anita, great to have you with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, Anita, our subject of discussion today is the ease with which history is lost, and clearly you're somebody who is very passionate about chronicling various aspects of history and women in history. So, run us through a little bit about your work in this area and how you also went about researching for your book, Sophia.
Well, to start off, let me just give you the way my brain works, because sometimes people, I'm so glad you didn't, but sometimes people introduce me as a historian. And whenever anyone does that, I look over my shoulder because that just doesn't feel like me. I'm a journalist, and my brain works and is wired in a journalistic way. So I've always been interested in not what people tell you, but what they don't tell you. So when you're doing political interviews in particular, and you'll know what I mean in India just as well as people watching in England, it isn't often what a politician tells you that gives you the information. It is they don't tell you, or what they choose not to leave out. So with that in mind, I've always been interested even in history. With studying in this country, we did things like the Indian Mutiny is what they called it. Now, with the sensibilities that I had been raised with at home, that just always felt very odd to me, because I thought I'm listening to something else at home and I'm being taught about this mutiny at school. I can't correlate the two. And so when I didn't get the answers I needed from my history teacher, I decided to sort of, even at school, start reading around the subject. So it's just to understand why I'm interested in history. It's because to me it's like a story. It's like a journalist's story. And I go about my research in a very similar way. So getting back to Sophia, I never wanted to write a book. Writing a book is really hard work. And if you know any journalists, you will know we are inherently lazy people. We like doing short bursts of activity, throw it away. That's the way we are. But there was a picture in a magazine which I was looking through, and it just didn't make any sense to me. It was a picture of a woman. It just said suffragettes selling newspapers outside Hampton Court. It was a great picture. She looked really feisty. And it was in black and white. But something about it just told me that she was as brown as I was. There was something. You've heard of gaydar. We Punjabis have Punjab. You can see a Punjabi from Google Earth. You can tell. And so I thought, how do I not know about a Punjabi suffragette? It's ridiculous. And so I started to look, and that's really where the bug bit, because nothing that I was finding was making sense. It was two different stories again. One was of a socialite, Queen Victoria's goddaughter, somebody who visited Buckingham Palace, was a fashion icon. And on the other side, a traitor, a problem, someone who was arrested frequently. So that's really where the whole research situation started.
Right. And when you were researching specifically for the book, I mean, not your general research which you do for your passion for history, but specifically for the book, did you find that there was a lot of data, a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, but it was just simply there, but nobody was reporting about it, nobody was talking about it? I mean, what was your experience, and how did you bring it all together?
So this is really fascinating. Some things you start pulling on a thread that is called the Leap Singh, because her name is Sophia the Leap Singh, and an avalanche will fall on you. You will hear about Ranjit Singh, the Lion of Punjab, her grandfather. You will hear about Leap Singh, the boy king, who was forced to sign over his kingdom, and the Kohinoor diamond, which has been much in the news in India and in this country. And those things will immediately fall on you. But look for a girl called Sophia, and you will fight for 4 years, as I did, to uncover this story. Because she was buried. She had been buried in archive boxes. She had been buried in people's memory. She had been buried deliberately by the British authorities, who at that time could not afford, while they were trying to keep Punjab and the rest of India under control. This nascent nationalist movement was growing in India in the early 1900s, and they could not afford to have suddenly this heroine, this Indian princess who is fighting for rights, fighting and defying the British government. They couldn't have that going all the way to India, so they also suppressed the story. So this complete cluster of, first of all, deliberate attempts. Then history puts a lot of dust over things, and particularly if you don't wear a crown, if you're not a Maharaja, she was the princess who had no crown and no kingdom, you get lost. In the juncture between India getting independence and India being a land of Maharajas, people wanted to venerate other kings. You know, they had Nehru, they had Gandhi, they had Jinnah. They had no need for these old Maharajas and their offspring who couldn't even speak their own language. And then, of course, let's do the added layer of forgetfulness. She was a woman. Now, women's history, if you think history is fragile and like sand that falls through your fingers, women's history is something that evaporates just in sunlight. Because first of all, people don't write it down, or they didn't write it down. And second of all, it is too easily forgotten by mostly male historians who fill our bookshelves these days.
So, when you were working on the book, did you also come across, connected stories which you think deserve to be researched and told?
I mean, the greatest frustration writing this book is that I think I'm going to bloody have to do it again. I mean, it's just, you don't understand. I was really happily along a career trajectory, and now I'm going to have to do something else. But I'll give you two examples, and these are just ones that come to mind now. One from India and one from this country. People who I think have been forgotten and who deserve books of their own. So where do you want to start? You tell me, India or England?
Let's start with India.
Okay, so one of the people that Sophia crossed paths with, she met lots of nationalists when she was in India. And the nationalism, Indian nationalism, actually put the fire in her, which transformed her from this pointless, vacuous socialite into this striving political heroine, in my opinion, who fought to get women the vote, fought and succeeded to get women the vote. But one of the people she met, she just refers to her in her diary as this lovely Bengali woman who's sitting elegantly in her living room. And she just has a very sort of strange, and I got to know Sophia quite well over this 4-year period, a very strange turn of phrase. And she often wrote little codes to herself, saying, she has been great trouble. And her name was Sarla Devi. Now, I don't know if that name means anything to you. If it doesn't, it should. Sarla Devi was a major nationalist. She set up training camps underground to teach people self-defense. You know, when the British were coming at them with lathi charges, she taught groups of people, men and women, how to fight, how to stand up for themselves, have networks of intelligence to share information. It was a nascent revolutionary right in the heart of Lahore at that time. A fascinating woman. She used to start every one of her meetings with almost not a religious mantra, but a mantra of all of the people that India had to be proud of. And one of the people that she often chanted about actually happened to be Maharaja Ranjit Singh. So she tried to teach Indians, be proud of your history, don't believe this narrative that you are the natives, the second classers. And then she would teach people, a woman, a little Bengali elegant woman would teach people how to defend themselves. So her story, I didn't know about it. And then the English story, I mean, to me is just delicious. You've heard these days, I guess, about concentration camps and scorched earth. These are terms which I'm sure you're familiar with. Concentration camps, thanks to Hitler. Scorched earth, thanks to Stalin, who used to burn out all the farms and the houses so nobody could grow anything for years after he had visited his wrath upon them. Well, these are terms actually that the British gave to the world in South Africa during the Boer War. A man called Kitchener used these devices against the upstarts, Boers, who were rising up against British rule. And one woman, and the news never got to England. It never got to England after the First Boer War. It was completely suppressed. But one woman was starting to get these little bits of information, and she was a church mouse, if you like. She was a vicar's daughter living in St. Ive in Cornwall, a lovely place, entirely unremarkable woman. But she got these little snippets of information, and she thought, I want to know more. So again, she pulled on these threads, and everything that she was getting made her feel uncomfortable until she had a suspicion that things were being done in her name. You know, it was the start of the not in our name movement, if you like, that she wasn't comfortable with. So she, on her own, travelled to South Africa, demanded entry into these concentration camps where women and children were being left to starve, and took documentary and photographic evidence, which she then brought back to England, and foreign policy changed. Those concentration camps were closed, largely as a result of Emily Hoghouse's work. Again, a name, if I say this, shout that name in the street, there should be statues to this woman, but there are not. People won't even know what her name is. She infuriated Kitchener so much, he called her that bloody woman. That was what she was known as in dispatches. So again, I mean, a fantastic story which could have a whole book devoted to it.
Clearly, some very interesting examples there, Anita. One imagines that whilst we talk about getting, programs on empowering women in the modern world today, one could just study women in history and their achievements, their struggles, and what they've been through. Um, and that would be phenomenal sort of fodder for women of today and people in general.
I mean, you're right in part, but what I would like is not for it to be corralled as women's history. I would just like it to be history. I would like it to be as important and part of what we teach our children. I mean, I have two sons, and they will have no problem finding role models or people to either abhor or admire when they go through history books. I have a niece who I love just as much as my sons, and I worry, who's she going to look at? Who it's going to be harder for her to find, and I don't want her children and grandchildren to feel the same way. So this is history. This is just part of history. It is part of what happened, and I would love us to be better at writing it down, recording it, and celebrating it as well. I'm part of a movement that's trying to get a statue to a woman erected in Parliament Square. We have, I forget the number, I mean an eye-watering number of statues in front of the Houses of Parliament, a place where I used to go to work every day, and not one statue of a woman. So, I think you have to start raising your voice and saying, you know what, in Hindi we say "main ho na," we're here too, and I think that's a very important thing.
Sure. Given your experience in this area, do you think there are certain people who have been better at stamping out history, or the way history has treated different people? Are you seeing, pockets of differences on how history has been written or hidden?
I think everybody is equally good at erasing the things that they don't want us to know about. Now, their motivations may be very different. If you want to paper over the cracks of civil war, you can do that. If you want to paper over atrocities committed in your own timeline, people do that. The methodology is always very, very similar. First of all, you find that people, wherever, and that's on your side of the world and my side of the world, now and then. If it's women, they're first of all disparaged. Their morality is called into question. Their modesty is called into question. They are made to look as unsympathetic as possible. And then slowly but surely, newspapers, for example, get lent on to stop talking about them. And then when they're gone, they just fade away. They fade away so very quickly. And the same is actually for episodes, epochs in history. It's the historian, it's the lone historian who can be bothered to go through dusty boxes. And let me tell you, it is not fun. It is not a fun process. It is actually pretty down and dirty sometimes. But you're driven by that desire to find out and put somebody back on a shelf. And so all my only hope is that, we find not the usual suspects. Just dig a little bit deeper. Go to the second archive box. The Churchills and the Nehrus and the Gandhi, they've had so much. But just look on the second shelf, or look, in the third paragraph of the newspaper article that you're reading, and you will find an extraordinary human. And they are our humans. They brought us to where we are. We should know more about more people.
So, I believe you're already working on your next book, which is on the Kohinoor.
Yes, it is.
And I'm sure that's a very exciting subject, which a lot of people, both in India and in UK, and I'm sure across the world, would want to know more about. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the book?
Well, it's a co-production, if you like, between me and an outstanding historian and he really is a historian with a capital H, William Dalrymple, who I'm sure you're familiar with. And it came up just because we were chatting one day about what we had been doing. So I had done Sophia, Leap Singh, and the Leap Singh period, and which covers very much the Kohinoor's passing from India to Britain. And he had done that fantastic Return of the King book, which covers the period of Shah Shuja. And the Duranis, and we just had a lot, sort of like we were just very excitedly talking to each other. This is at the Jaipur Literary Festival. Then William had the brilliant idea of bringing a little talk together here in the UK. So we did a talk together with another fantastic historian called Navtej Sarna, who also has an interest in the Leap Singh period. And just from that, and I for the life of me, I like to think I said it, but he probably said it, or Navtej might have said, I don't know, but somebody said, wouldn't it be great if we just pieced this together like a jigsaw? Like what happened from the moment that rock came out of the ground to the point where it actually sits in the Crown Jewels in London, in the Tower of London? What happened? How it went on an amazing journey. And so that's what we're doing now. That's what we're putting together right
now. Wow. That sounds intriguing, and I'm sure you'll have lots of people looking forward to that book. I certainly am.
Better get on and write it then.
So that brings us to the end of this short but very interesting session with you, Anita. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure our viewers also had a great time, and we look forward to more great books from you.
Well, thank you very much indeed.